You are listening to The Black Landscape with Andrea Spearman, where Black excellence is always trending. Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, Andrea Spearman, and this is The Black Landscape. And today we are joined by choreographer, educator, and leader, Cherie Hill. Welcome.
Hi, Andrea. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're so excited to have you here. We're going to dive right on in. If you would please briefly share about your background, growing up here in the Bay Area, talk to our audience.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So I'm Cherie, pronoun she, her, and I am a Black woman and actually grew up in Southern California in the Long Beach area, started dancing pretty young. And what brought me up to the Bay Area was I went to UC Berkeley as an undergraduate student and majored in dance and performance studies and African American studies. And at that time, I was with my lifelong partner now of about 25 years. And we had one son, Jamarai, who was, I think, 3 when we first moved up there. And we lived in the village at UC Berkeley, the family village, which was super fun. And that's where I think I got serious about really wanting to make a career out of dance. I also got really into research around dance and began researching identity. I was a Haas scholar there and had the chance to go to New York with my family for a summer and study urban bushwomen, look at their archive videos, see some of their shows, talk to some of their dancers. Yeah, so, and of course, that was amazing and really admired Jawole Willow-Joe-Zoller and the work that she did, and really started to identify as a Black female choreographer, I feel like, pretty strongly. And then that was also when I started teaching. I was part of a program called Arts Bridge, which hooked me up with a mentor in my dance department. And then one of the first schools I taught at was Maxwell Park Elementary in Oakland, where I worked with a teacher during the school day to bring dance. I did creative movement and some West African dance. And I was so glad for that experience because once I graduated from Cal, I was able to get some jobs as a dance teaching artist with nonprofit organizations in the area. So I was teaching in Oakland, in Berkeley, and in Walnut Creek. A couple years after that, decided to go to grad school and study more dance. There I really studied West African dance. Before that, I was studying Afro-Caribbean dance at Laney College. And then after that, it was kind of where I am now, history of just like working in dance, choreographing in dance, raising a family. I had another son, Urijah. We moved back to the Bay Area after grad school, where I started teaching dance and doing dance administration full time.
Nice. So let's back up a little bit. What drew you to dance as a child?
Oh, I was one of those kids that loved to move, really, just kind of naturally. I was always dancing on the playground. I would watch videos at that time. MTV was like a new thing when I was around like 8 years
Oh,
old. And, the greats, I call them, like Janet Jackson, Paula Abdul, Michael Jackson, Madonna, were doing some major dance moves in their videos, heavy dance. And my parents saw that in me and they put me into dance classes at the Parks and Rec Center where I did like combination classes when I was little, jazz, tap, ballet. And then at about 8 years old, they were like, wow, she really loves this, and put me in a dance studio.
nice. Shout out to, city parks and recs programs because they really have such an open field and they're bringing folks into the arts in a very special and specific way.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, we've danced together a little bit and I've seen your work in person and on film. What draws you to collaborate with nature?
Yes, I do remember dancing. That was so much fun.
It was.
uh, it was. That was a great time. Nature. I got really drawn into nature. Actually, I think I've always been attracted to nature. I've loved being in nature, hiking, gardening, just really have a respect for the power of nature and that feminine essence of Mama Earth and that grounding. But I really came into the power of nature and movement when I was in graduate school and I studied with Anna Halprin. So when I was in graduate school in Colorado, actually, I came to study at the Esalen Institute for 2 sessions with Anna Halprin and Tara Reistar. And, Anna is just a godmother of dance, of postmodern dance, contemporary dance, and movement and health and wellness. And we did these exercises where we were really thinking about our senses and how our senses can be broadened to just be able to connect with nature and to listen what's happening with sound in nature. And we would do these scores around different elements of nature like trees and rock and water. And I was just so fascinated by how I felt I was connecting in this voiceless way, like connecting with nature in this physical yet spiritual way, and how I could see how the process, the life cycle of nature is similar to ourselves as human beings. And that also, there's just this subtlety that nature has. I mean, it's just there, it's just existent, but so many things are happening even though we can't see it. And there was this huge grounding and foundation I found when I now take my pieces into nature, or I do a sensory walk, or I do a mirroring exercise with an element in nature, that helps me discover and clarify things that are happening in my life and in my practice, or if there's questions I have, I start to just get this clarity. And so it's been really powerful to experience that. And I just always feel like it's important to bring it into my work now.
Yes. Yes. That's so grounding. As a Black woman creating movement, what has that experience been like? Southern California versus like Bay Area.
Yeah, I feel like I can't. Southern California, I always say I've spent my adult life in the Bay Area. So I have, a different perspective around Southern California because it's been my growing up place. And I would say growing up, I wasn't as, like, of course, I knew I was a Black woman and I knew about inequities happening and racism happening. And an article I just wrote, I talk a little bit about that and like my experience of the Rodney King riots in, South Central and Compton, and like what that was for me as a, child in middle school, seeing that. But I didn't, I didn't understand. I wasn't too much into identity as a Black choreographer, I would say, when I was here in SoCal as a child. I did choreograph my first 2 dance pieces as a high school student that were staged in like a concert we had, but it wasn't about so much Black identity. I did have some more knowledge around female identity though at that time, but I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't thinking of race as much. And I feel like in the Bay Area, definitely I was, I got more into thinking about race and racial equity and how important that is, as well as intersectionality. And I think, my studies of urban bushwomen really paved that way. And then later, finding out about Black feminist standpoint theory, which is my theoretical approach to choreography, because that Black feminist standpoint theory comes from Patricia Hill Collins, who has just stated that the Black woman's experience is so important to understanding our history and our culture in America as well as worldwide, and that there is a great lack of opportunity to really hear from Black women and their authentic experiences due to all the stereotypes, that are out there, and just how we've kind of been not disappeared.
Mm,
Sorry. Um,
that's a good word, though.
I know. I'm trying to think of the right word. How Black women have been unacknowledged and underappreciated and undervalued in this society, especially American society. Yet we have seen so many things. Like, I love, there's an example Patricia Hill Collins gives of, like, even during antebellum time,
Mm,
Black women were all over the place. They were in the household, they were in the quiet secret meetings that were happening between white men, they were in the fields, they were raising the children, they were talking to the head mistress or wife. Like, there's so much experience that we hold,
mhm,
both consciously and subconsciously, because we've been such a huge part of the development of the society and culture. And so getting our experiences out there is super important. So I definitely have done that more in Northern California, where I feel like
mm,
it's been just received and understood in a way that I'm not sure it will be in Southern California, but I have yet to see.
mm.
So,
So, we're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsor. To catch up on previous episodes of The Black Landscape, stream on Apple and Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Anchor.fm, and Spotify. Dimensions Dance Theater will celebrate its 50th anniversary with performances of new works by company collaborators Laura Elaine Ellis and Nimli Napla. One of the country's longest-standing dance companies, Dimensions at 50 boasts a history of artistic innovation and collaboration. See the performances Saturday and Sunday, October 22nd and 23rd at Mills College in Oakland. Get your tickets at www.dimensionsdance.org. The link will also be in this episode's credits. We are back with Cherie Hill. We've talked so much about dance and movement. Let's move to the educational side of that. You've been a teaching artist for Luna Dance Institute in Berkeley. What does it mean to be a teaching artist? Break that down for our audience.
yeah, thanks for asking me that. Yes, I taught at Luna Dance Institute as a dance teaching artist for about 8 years. And prior to that, I was a dance teaching artist for a few other organizations. And then now I'm more of an independent dance teaching artist. But for me, what I've always loved around the dance teaching artist kind of verbiage is that we are artists going in to teach. So it's sometimes it's a little bit different, and not always. I think it can also be interchanged with like dance educator or dance teacher. But sometimes there are dance educators who aren't still practicing artists as much, or their teaching is their artistic practice. And usually, a dance teaching artist is currently making art in the field. So they're currently choreographing, or they might be dancers collaborating, on material. But it's supposed to be an avenue for us as artists to share what we're doing with our students. And I tended to teach younger students, like elementary school, as well as middle school and high school students. And it was always a treat to be able to think about what I was working on as an artist and ways that I could bring that to them.
Mm,
That was developmentally appropriate, because obviously it was going to be a little bit different, in a classroom teaching
mhm.
kindergartners or fourth graders versus like working with my dancers in a studio getting ready for a performance.
Right.
But one of the projects that I had a lot of fun, that I think I really, fleshed out as far as thinking about it for choreography and as a teaching artist, was my creative movement in the African aesthetic project, which was a 12-week unit teaching unit that I put together that was around ways that elements of African dance, African diaspora dance could be taught in an improvisational format. And so one of my favorite lessons was on undulations, or I would call waves in the body, where I would, tell kids like, okay, think about what are all the different things you know about waves. And they'd say, like waves crashing, or waves of electricity, or wavy lines. And we would like take those images and we'd like do them in our bodies. And I tell them, do them just in your arms, try them in your legs, try them down on the ground, on your back, try jumping high up in the air, like, wave your arms while you're jumping. And I would usually play some Afro-Caribbean music sometimes, or some Afro-Haitian music, and we'd put sequences together like wave, wave, waves in your arms, wave in your legs, spin, and it was like super fun, and just also helped me just see like different ways I could put those types of movements together for my dancers in my pieces that I was doing at that time, which was Terrestrial Footprint series. I did Terrestrial Footprints Part 1 and Terrestrial Footprints Part 2 that was performed in different places in the Bay Area.
Nice. Kids they are such little sponges. They
Yeah,
are always so excited to move and be moved in a way that's silly and fun, and then turn around and surprise you with their seriousness or their own knowledge of body and sensibilities.
definitely. I felt very blessed to be able to work with the students I worked with, and that freedom that many of them have, especially in those younger ages, is really inspiring. And they're super smart as well. Like, they would make their own dances and they would put things together and they would talk about what they saw, and they would work with their peers and moving their bodies, and they'd be up and down in a flash. Seemed like no inhibitants. And I always felt that I got lots of energy and blessings from being in that space with them.
Right. Now, you said, such a difference between working with, adult dancers and working with children in school. Has there been a difference in the settings, like creating curriculum for a private school versus public school, or more community venues?
There is definitely difference in the settings I've taught in. The schools that I taught in Oakland, it would depend a lot of times, because we were building dance programs. We could have an empty dance classroom, but sometimes it would take years to get that. But that would be nice. Or if not, there were schools I was teaching in the cafeteria at,
Mhm.
so I would make friends with the janitor to, make sure to help to get the floors cleaned in time, because kids would be rolling on the floor and stuff. And you
Right.
would want those floors to be clean, and to put the tables away. We'd always have to make sure the tables were stacked and out of the way, and also wouldn't fall on kids if they like accidentally were around them. So that was a different process than working at the studio in Berkeley, which was a beautiful dance studio with mirrors and a floor. And, kids would come after school. And
Hmm.
I think that there was just a different way that you could approach being with those students. Versus like being in the public school. But it didn't mean the curriculum was exactly different. I just
Hmm.
felt like I could maybe be a little bit more serious when it was time to like warm up, versus like, having to get kids like all excited at the schools, and like, separate them from what they've been doing all day, and like be
Hmm.
very enigmatic. Like in the dance studio, like students took off their shoes. That was a big thing. They could dance barefoot. There were rituals that were a little bit different than in the public schools. And then I know I
Hmm.
ran into you one time. I used to teach Saturdays in the libraries all over Oakland. And
Yeah.
that was also, yeah, a different setting, being in the libraries in a back room and doing family dance. And that was also interesting because sometimes people would take their shoes off, sometimes not. And that was usually a big space that we cleared everything out as well. We'd get there early and we'd move the tables, and we might have to vacuum depending on what was there before. And sometimes there'd be itchy carpet. So even though it was fine, it wasn't that beautiful dance floor in the dance studio. So there's different spaces, but I've learned to adapt, and I think there's possibility in so many spaces for dance. But you always hope that everyone can have the opportunity to move in a beautiful dance studio that has a great floor. That's always the best if possible.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, family, it's me, Andrea. Did you know that I also host a video series called 10 in 10? 10 questions in 10 minutes. It's a series of quick insights with the local Bay Area dance community. Guests include Vogue Ballroom King Sir Jacques, Two-Spirit Mover Javier Stelfresquez, Polyrhythmic Queen Jessica Racinos, and more. YouTube link in the description of this episode. Now back to the show. And speaking of opportunity and change, since 2020, you have arrived as one of 3 co-directors for Hope More Dance, now known as HMD. What does it mean to have this distributed leadership model? And how did you come to this kind of way of working within this company?
Yeah, that's a huge question because it's been a huge process full of lots of dialogue. I mean, I think that's the first part is, Hope Moore's founder invited myself and Carla Quintero to be co-curators of the Bridge Project, which then extended into being co-directors of HMD and the Bridge Project. And so I think that first part is invitation to share leadership with whoever the executive leader is. And then lots of dialogue, I'll say. Like we've had many meetings around what distributive leadership looks like. And one of the best things we did is we hired an outside consultant. We worked with Safi Giroux from Leader Spring, which is a great organization that helps leaders who are looking to work in equity to just be consulted with and plan out what that's going to look like. But she was great in having an outside eye and of guiding us into what distributive leadership could mean for HMD specifically. And we also brought in early on artists that we work with into community meetings to also hear about what they thought distributive leadership could be and what would cultural equity look like for HMD. So having lots of voices in the beginning, having an outside facilitator help us plan for that, and being open to things to emerge and change has been really important. And I think we continue to do that as we continue to build a model which is still, shaping itself for what that looks like. And also that distributive leadership didn't just mean as staff that we were the leaders, but that board has their own way of being leaders, which we're still figuring out. What does that mean? That the artists we work with have a voice as well. And then we recently created an artist council, which is made up of 4 artists in the community, and gave them a portion of our budget to curate and to support projects that they feel are important and that are working towards equity in the arts in the Bay Area. And so they have their own kind of form of being leaders within themselves. So it's an expanded vision of leadership over many different people and configurations within the organization, which is exciting and is just a different way of having to communicate, which I would say has been the biggest part. Is it takes a lot of communication, a lot of talking, a lot of dialogue, which is money, right? Like the more you're getting together to talk, it's not a super efficient way of running an organization, but it is more to me, and I think to us, an equitable way of running an organization, especially since Hope is trying to step back as founder and knows that eventually this organization will pass on, to other people to lead. So it's been an exciting journey, and I'm proud of the work that we've done for sure. Just decentering whiteness and making it more of a shared leadership model in the organization, and more is to come. So yeah, it's been good.
And it's interesting that you all said, you've created this artist council, you're having the board contribute more, and it's still the three of you. It's like you still have, even though you're co-curating the company, you still have like these titles. Does that mean you're still having certain responsibilities for each person and you still get like input from the others? How would like a typical kind of day work around those different responsibilities?
Yeah, we do have titles, and we do have, I would say, I guess, significant parts that we are kind of lead. Right now, I'm the director of arts leadership, and prior to that, I was the director of art and community. So I would be the lead on mostly the community engagement work that we were doing, and with our community engagement residency artists. But even within that, me leading and doing a lot of the artist check-ins, doing a lot of the coordination, scheduling, and thinking about the bigger picture, I would always meet with Hope and Carla and say, okay, like this is our program. How do we want it to expand? Or this artist has a question about this. Or even artists would ask if they could talk to all three of us, especially if we were working with artists who also were co-directors or co-curators, to just learn more about how we are distributing our work. So we tend to bring each other into the things that we are more focused or leading on, but
Mm-hmm.
not, 100%, but probably about 60 to 80% of it, does get shared, or decision making is a shared process as well, around like who's going to lead this workshop. And I might meet with that artist, and then I report back and say, oh, this is what this artist wants to do. I think they're great. Let's look at the budget. What do you guys think?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how we approach it, because we know that all three of us can't be a part of everything, but we feel it's important to communicate and to make a lot of the decisions together.
Have you all found yourselves being called upon to support guiding other entities into this way of working administratively?
Yeah, definitely. We do get some calls and some emails around, we're looking at doing a similar process. Can you all help us, or can we talk to you about our process? And we just did a talk in March with Leader Spring around our distributed leadership as a case study. And I think there were about 30 to 40 people who attended that workshop. And we always are very, intentional about saying this has worked for us and these are the decisions we've made, but you have to find what's going to work for you and your organization and your values. But that we can, share an example of things that we've done, and how it's worked for us. And we want to put together like a video series where we can address some of the questions we've gotten around distributive leadership, and make it available to people to download and watch, because we've realized that there's a lot of interest in how to create this and what we've done. So we hope to be doing that soon.
Fantastic work. I can't wait to watch that. And it's really been interesting seeing the shift in arts leadership to more shared collective and decentralizing whiteness and opening up more space to get away from that hierarchy of leadership, because I think it works out better for the community as a whole, because then you don't have one person just holding all the power at the top. It's like we want to spread it around, we want to share it, so that way nobody feels like stuck in this old way of working.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that that's what I hear too, just from people, especially like younger artists, younger administrators, this desire to have more of a shared kind of responsibility. And I also, in my, you know, strives to make things more distributive leadership and more shared, there is also that other part of people maybe not wanting to take on more leadership or responsibility, right? Of like, no, actually, I just want to do my job and that's it. Like, I don't want to have to make that decision, or I don't want to like have to be a part of that meeting. So, I think it's a process and a tug and a pull sometimes, and an openness to who is open to it, who's excited about it. And yeah, so we'll see what happens, in our whole Bay Area ecosystem, because I do think there's other organizations who are moving towards more distributive and shared leadership as well. So it'll be
Mhm.
interesting to see, in 5 to 10 years, what that looks like.
Yes, agreed. So, Cherie, what's next for you?
Oh, goodness. Well, I actually recently moved back to Southern California, from the Bay Area, which I miss, but was a decision that was great for me and my family because we have a lot of bigger space where both me and my partner can have our art spaces. So I recently finished a little dance studio in my house, and he has a little
Yay!
music, yeah, and visual arts, painting studio space. And I am starting to do more work around movement and wellness. So I started a Dance for Moms online class series in the last winter, which was just about being able to rejuvenate and being able to relax and move our bodies in different ways to bring joy and revitalization. And so that series is going to be going online soon. And I'm offering, classes and privates around just movement and wellness for those that are interested online as well as at home. And I'm going to be working on a project around vulnerability and belonging, which is going to be a site specific project out here, where I'm hoping to make some connections with the indigenous people, the indigenous native communities that are very close to where I'm living now on Payomkawichum homeland. And also, I'm working with a couple of collaborators in Germany who are also working on vulnerability and belonging, and looking to just do some site specific work that invites participants to not only view dance, but also to participate in ways that help us think about land support and breath, and how we can open ourselves to new ideas, new stories, and new possibilities. So that's going to be happening in 2023.
Well, Cherie, it's been so wonderful chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrea. It's always a pleasure to see you, and I'm so excited to be a part of this.
Yeah, please tell the audience where they can find you online.
Yeah, you can visit my website at movedasoul.com. So that's MOVDASOUL.com. I'm also at Instagram at that same at movedasoul, and I would love to hear from you.
Thank all of you out there for listening and supporting another season. This has been another episode of The Black Landscape, where Black excellence is always trending.